In parts 1 and 2 of this tutorial, I went through the process of creating custom formats and mappings, which could be used to map between input media and the working format of the scene, and also between the working format and the output format of the deliverable. I will now explain how these custom formats can be used in other scenes and other jobs. All the formats which are used in a scene are saved along with all the other scene data. This means that if the scene is exported to another system, or open for rendering on a different machine, such as a Flux store for example, then the formats will still be available, even if there is no connection to the scene's original database. Every non-basic format used in the scene is listed here as a scene format. Even factory formats which are used must first be copied into the scene. For example, the HD 1920 by 1080 format, which I'm using as the working format, was automatically copied into the scene formats when I first created the scene. Some of these formats may only be required in this scene, for example to map a certain camera which is only used in this scene. However, if I want to use a format in other scenes, then I can copy it into the current job by clicking on the Format Actions button and then choosing the Create Job Format from Scene Format option. Notice that there is now a job icon next to the format in the formats list. This format will now appear as a job format in other scenes I create within this job. If I want the format to be available to other jobs, not just to other scenes within the current job, then I can create a global format using the option on the Format Actions menu. Now there's a global copy of this format, which any scene in any job will be able to access. Note that the job formats are stored within the database as part of the job. However, global formats are stored in a separate Global Formats database, which can either live on the local machine or could alternatively be hosted on a remote server to allow access by other systems. By default, the Global Formats database lives on the local machine. However, this can be changed in the System Settings page of the Baselite Preferences. For example, if I wanted to use global formats which live on another Baselite system, I can enter that system's database hostname here. Note that when the application first starts up, it will try to read the global formats from the database host specified here. If the host cannot be contacted, then you will get a pop-up message telling you that the global formats database hostname cannot be resolved, and you must either enter a different host or leave the entry blank to use the local database. Now you may have noticed that some of these icons are white and some are grey. As I mentioned in part 1, when a format icon is grey, it means that the format specification is the same as its parent. For example, here both the job and scene formats are the same as the global format. However, if I make a change to the format in the scene, for example by creating a new mask, then you will now see that the icon is white. Now this is important. Remember that the version of a format which is actually used by the scene is the scene format. If the scene format was created from a job or a global format, then you may want to have any changes which are made to that parent format reflected in the scenes format. Let me explain with an example. If you recall from part 2, I made a custom mapping from the DCI 2048 by 858 format to the HD 1920 by 1080 format. I shifted the 2048 by 858 window down slightly to allow space for subtitles to be added. I'll now create a global format from that DCI 2048 by 858 scene format so it can be used in other jobs. Notice that the scene icon is currently grey, as the scene format is the same as the global format. And you'll notice that the Global Formats button at the top of the Formats editor is now available. Clicking on this button will load the settings for the global format instead of the scene format. In order to edit the global format, I first need to select Edit Global Format from the Format Actions menu. Now remember that I could be doing this on a different machine, which is accessing the same global format database. I'll now make a change to the global format by resetting that vertical offset of the mapping by clicking on the Reset button here. Okay, the mapped window is now vertically centered again. I'll save the changes by clicking on the Save Changes button. A box has now opened, warning that the global format is now different from the scene format and asking me if I want to update the scene format with the same changes. In this case, I will choose to keep the scene format as it was, with the shifted window. Now the icon for the scene format is white, indicating that it's different from the global format. If I now decided that I did want the scene format to be the same as the global format, I can update the scene format by selecting Copy Global Format to Scene Format from the Format Actions menu. Now, as this message says, this change can be undone, but I won't replace the scene format now. Instead, I'll show you how you can set up a scene so that its formats are automatically updated if a parent job or global format is changed. In the Format and Color page of the scene settings, there is an option to auto-update the scene format when job or global formats change. If I enable this option, you will see that we now get a dialog box asking if we want to automatically update this format. If I say yes, you'll see that the scene format icon is now grey again, indicating that the scene format is the same as the global format. If I now edit the global format again, we now get a dialog box telling us that the scene format has automatically been updated. Note, however, that it says that this can be undone. This is also important, as you may have specifically set up the format in the current scene and not want it to be changed. Of course, you can avoid this by leaving the Format Auto Update button in the scene settings switched off. However, if the button was already on when you opened the scene and the format has been updated automatically, you can simply go to the scene format in the Formats editor and then press Ctrl or Command Z to undo the update action. Okay, the third part of a format definition is its metadata burn-ins. Burn-ins allow you to add specific production data to an image. They're primarily intended as a means to provide visual reference information to other stages in the post-production workflow. For example, offline dailies may have source timecode and reel information burned in, so they can be checked against the master footage when an EDL is conformed. Burn-ins can also include graphic elements, such as a company logo, which may be useful for watermarking content before sending it out for a review. Each format can be defined with its own specific set of burn-ins. When you define a new format, it won't have any burn-ins to start with. However, some of the included factory formats provide example burn-ins which can be used as a template. For example, if I choose the HD 1920x1080 format, you can see that it includes data dailies and film dailies burn-ins. I can copy one of these templates and use it as a starting point for the burn-ins in another format. I'll select the data dailies and then click on the Duplicate button here. I have the option to duplicate to either the current format, which will simply make a second copy of the burn-in in this format, which I could then modify, or I can choose to duplicate to another format. Okay, I can now choose all the formats I want to copy it into from this list. For this example, I'll choose the DCI 2048x858 format. Of course, I probably wouldn't want to add burn-ins to a DCP master, but I may want to use this format to render out other deliverables, such as a review copy for production. I can now change the name of the burn-in if I want to, and then click on the Duplicate button. You can now see that I have a production data burn-in in the DCI 2048x858 format. Okay, now I'll edit the burn-in in this format. In order to view the burn-in, I can enable it on the current cursor output, so it'll be visible on the image display. I'll just move the Formats window to one side and then open the cursor's view so I can enable the burn-in. First, I need to set the viewing format to DCI 2048 by 858 so I can actually view its burn-ins. And now I need to add the option to show the burn-in. Okay, I'll now close the cursor view again. So you can now see the burn-in in the image display. To edit any of the items, I simply select them in the list in the burn-in tab of the Formats editor. I can now vary the parameters such as position, size, alignment, opacity, and even change the font. To remove an item, you click on the Remove button here. And to insert a new item, there are buttons for adding images, text, and flags. I'll remove the existing logo and add a different image. A burn-in logo can be any still image format which Baselight supports, such as PNG, JPEG, TIFF, or DPX. You can adjust the size, position, and opacity of the image. Text items can include percent codes, which are replaced with specific metadata, such as timecode and date. If you've used categories to flag certain shots in your scene, these can also be displayed in the burn-in. If you don't want to display certain categories, they can be hidden here. It's also possible to edit the burn-ins interactively. I'll open the cursor's view again and click on the Burn-in Edit toggle button. Items can now be moved and scaled by dragging on their handles. You can also add extra items by right-clicking on the image. If you click on an item's handle, you can add borders, or you can remove the item completely. The changes that I've just made have been stored in the scene format. Now, if I want to make the new burn-ins available to other scenes, I can copy the scene format to the job format or the global format. Okay, we've now looked at all the different aspects of Baselight formats. And remember that Baselight and Daylight share the same format system, so they can work together seamlessly within the same pipeline. Before I finish, I just want to cover a specific situation you may come across with certain types of input media. Some cameras provide an option to record the entire or effective pixel area of the sensor. This is often referred to as open gate. This is a hangover from film cameras. When importing a media file which was recorded with an open gate resolution, the file header normally specifies an additional crop area. I have an example media file here which is from an Alexa camera. In the metadata, you can see that it has a resolution of 3414 by 2198 pixels. However, the file was actually recorded using the full area of the sensor, which is 3424 by 2202 pixels. By default, the specified resolution setting would normally be used, as this is what the camera manufacturer recommends. However, it's possible to select either format as the input format for this shot. Note that in this scene, there is no format defined for either of the resolutions, so only the basic formats are offered. But we could of course create custom formats for them if we wanted to define a specific default mapping. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial series on formats. Thank you for watching.